Hello and welcome to Fruit of the Heart. Oh, not Fruit of the Harvest Ministries. Wrong show. Let's keep it real with your host Chantel. How y'all doing? And Pastor Chris is with us tonight on the family edition of Let's Keep It Real. God bless you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. Glad to see you tonight. We got a good show tonight. We're going to be discussing mental health from a spiritual, well, a science, medical, scientific, and a spiritual perspective. Right? We got some a video we're going to be showing you guys in just a second here, and just going to recap a little bit on what we did last week. Well, what the show was on last week. Last week, we talked about mental health versus having a demon and what that looked like from the church's perspective, right? From our perspective, because we don't represent the whole church, right? The different Christians have different perspectives on mental health versus demons. So when we talk about mental health, we're my husband and I, it's Chris, right? Chris and I, we're talking about our own personal viewpoints as ordained ministers, right? We're ordained pastors. And so we're talking to you from that perspective and not from any place of being licensed to teach on mental health, right? Per se, we're not licensed. I need to say that as a disclosure, we are not. I am licensed, but it's not in mental health, right? And so every recommendation, everything taught to you tonight is our own spiritual perspectives on both subjects, right? Mental health and coming to you from um, the church's um, viewpoint. Okay, so we talked about that. We talked about demons and we talked about how people can sometimes confuse mental health illnesses and disorders with someone having a what the church called a demon, right, or a devil, or spirits, right, inside of them, controlling them. And so we gave you our viewpoint. We showed you a video, and it was recommended that you check out and do some digging of your own and see what's being said from a medical science perspective, and what the church is saying about these spirits that we're seeing that's working in our family and our friends, our neighbors, and our governments. See what everybody is saying about it. The Lord tells us not to be ignorant to the devices of the enemy. And some people might view mental health as someone being attacked by the enemy. And so if that's you and you are a Christian and that's how you feel, you owe it to yourself and the person that you are trying to help get free to do some research and see what medical science is saying about mental health and what the church is saying about mental health. We talked about it. It was good last week. It really was. We got some feedback, and it was good that people who are struggling with mental health illness finally can hear others that are, well, I can't speak for Pastor Chris. He doesn't have any mental health illness that I've been made aware of. But I do. I have, been struggling with PTSD and depression. But I got, God is with me. God is teaching me how to keep my mind focused on Him. And so, does that stop the enemy from still trying to cause me to respond to the damage that he's done to me um, through trauma? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Even though I've been delivered, I still, meaning I'm not being afflicted. I don't have to experience those traumas anymore. God has given me peace, even though I'm walking in that peace because I've been delivered. I still have to fight sometime with those spirits that are trying to cause me to think on those things, right? Remember when I beat you down. Remember, when this happened. Remember when that happened. And I mentioned it last week. I thank God I'm in a position I am now that I can not only say, pray for me or cry out to God and get immediate relief. I'm thankful that I'm educated on what has been happening, what is happening. And today I am changed, right? So, but we talked about that last week. You might want to go back on my page and view that video. It's so informative and so good. Um, Tonight we want to educate you more. We want to really we want to come from a medical scientific um, perspective. We want to give you more of that because a lot of folk who can afford it has been diagnosed, right, with certain mental health illnesses. Um, and thank God they have been, because until then they didn't know what was going on with them. They didn't know why they were being afflicted. They can't, comprehend. Some of them understand that it's because mama had it and mama's had it, or daddy had it and daddy's had it. And they understand that it came down that way because that's how it does. I'm sorry, the generational curses just passed down. And so they got that part, but it took them being educated, seeking out and trusting um, the process of finding out what's going on before they learn what was really wrong. So we're going to let you hear what they're saying, what science is saying about these disorders, so that you may be educated. And we're also going to, our hopes are that you are able to get some help, right? You are able to work with the church and what we're doing spiritually, work with, doctors and stuff, trusting that God will provide them the answer to finally giving you some peace, right, within yourself. I believe, me and Pastor Chris was just talking about a little earlier, I believe that all things work together for the good of those that love God. And so if you are a Christian and you have been suffering with mental health illness, know that there is help, and God uses spiritual psychiatrists, psychologists to get you the help that you need. Let's check out this video before we go any further. Now, there's going to be some commercials that's going to pop up. I'll just have to skip them. But here we go.
Before we begin, we'd like to add a quick warning discussion. This video discusses mental illness, including eating disorders and PTSD. What is mental illness? According to National Alliance on Mental Illness, it's defined as a condition that affects a person's thinking, feeling, or mood for a sustained period of time that negatively impacts them. You might be wondering, is depression a mental illness? What about anxiety? Yes, they are. In fact, they're the most common types of mental illnesses. In this video, Psych2Go covers 10 of the most common types of mental illnesses. 1. Anxiety disorders. We know 18.1% doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the number of adults in the US who suffer from anxiety disorders. 40 million people suffer from symptoms of an anxiety disorder every year. Of those 40 million people, it's estimated that only 36.9% of them will get help. Anxiety disorders rarely appear alone, with depression being a common co-diagnosis. Anxiety disorders come in a few varieties: generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, SAD, and obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. So, what do all these anxiety disorders have in common? They're all characterized by nearly uncontrollable worry that messes with several aspects of daily life, such as sleep, relationships, school, and work. The good news is there are several treatment options available, which include different types of therapy and medication. 2. Personality disorders. What does it mean when someone's personality is disordered? Personality disorders refer to behavioral, emotional, and thought patterns that deviate greatly from the expectations of an individual's culture. The National Institute of Mental Health suggests that 9.1% of the population has the traits of a personality disorder. So what does this look like in real life? Could anyone who's a little different be diagnosed with a personality disorder? Well, according to the diagnostic criteria in the DSM-V, these differences must be causing the individual significant amounts of distress in the way they see themselves, others, and situations, inappropriate or exaggerated emotional responses, impulse control, and how well the individual relates to and functions around others. Personality disorders can't be cured, but thankfully they can be treated. This treatment consists of combinations of medications for the underlying mental health issues, as well as talk therapy. 3. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. If we say ADHD, what comes to mind? The stereotype of a person diagnosed with ADHD is usually a small child who's bouncing off the walls or can't finish a task. However, between 7.8 and 11% of children aged 4 to 17 are diagnosed with ADHD any given year. ADHD affects people of all ages and includes multiple symptoms, such as inability to concentrate, forgetfulness, inability to sit still, restlessness, and losing things. An individual's symptoms vary depending on their age, gender, and type of ADHD. Did you know there's actually 3 recognized types of ADHD? They're ADHD, combined type ADHD, impulsive hyperactive type, and ADHD inattentive and distractible type. Most people think meds are the only way to control ADHD, but many people diagnosed with the disorder find relief by using a combination of medications, life coaching, education, and talk therapy. 4. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Did you know that an estimated 6.8% of the US population will develop some form of post-traumatic stress disorder? That's about 19 million people in the US alone. So how does this happen? You, me, everybody will get stressed out by something in our lives. Some people will come across something so stressful that it affects them permanently. For many of them, this stress becomes trauma. A traumatic event is considered any event that should not have happened, such as a natural disaster, an assault, childhood neglect, abuse, starvation, and so on. Stress is a completely normal reaction to trauma, but what happens when the threat is gone? The stress and trauma stops on its own for most people when the mind and body understand the individual is no longer under attack. But what if the mind and body don't get the memo? Post-traumatic stress disorder refers to a prolonged fight or flight response that happens after the stressful event has stopped. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, refers to the PTSD that occurs due to a series of continued traumatic events, such as childhood abuse. Think of PTSD and CPTSD as the echoes of the stress response. These echoes can happen in the form of emotional flashbacks, nightmares, extreme anxiety or panic, difficulties connecting to others, and an overwhelming sense of fear. So how does someone get help for something so overwhelming? People suffering from PTSD or CPTSD can find relief through trauma therapies, such as eye movement desensitization reprocessing, EMDR, or traditional talk therapies, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. 5. Depression. An estimated 6.7% of the US population over the age of 18, 15.7 million people live with depression. Although the occasional low mood is a normal response to negative situations, depression entails low moods that are severe and last longer than 6 weeks. Depression manifests differently in women than men. Women tend to experience depression as feelings of sadness, worthlessness, and shame or guilt. Men tend to mistake the symptoms of depression as fatigue and being easily irritated. Common treatments for depression include cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, interpersonal therapy, IPT, psychodynamic therapy, psychoeducation groups, antidepressants, and various brain stimulation therapies. 6. Bipolar disorder. An estimated 2.8% of the US population that sought mental health treatment was diagnosed with some form of bipolar disorder in 2018. This number may be low, as many individuals who suffer from any mental health disorder do not seek treatment. Bipolar disorder means a lot more than just really bad mood swings for a couple of reasons. First, people diagnosed with bipolar disorder cannot completely control these mood swings. And second, these mood swings range from manic, feeling super happy or invincible, doing crazy spontaneous things, grandiosity, and having racing or unrealistic thoughts, to extreme bouts of depression, and maybe a little hypomania in between. Living with bipolar disorder isn't easy, but people struggling with the disorder can find a variety of medications and traditional counseling treatments to help them find more balance.
If you're taking anatomy and physiology for the first time, I can guarantee it's not like any course that you've ever taken, and that's why so many students struggle with it. But what if I told you there's a secret study tool out there that you can use to help you ace your next anatomy exam? It's called Anatomy Bootcamp, and it was created for students like you taking anatomy for
7. Eating disorders. Did you know there are almost as many people living with eating disorders as there are with bipolar disorder? It's true. Approximately 2.7% of individuals who sought treatment were diagnosed with an eating disorder in 2018. The most common question people ask about eating disorders is what's the difference between not being happy with your body and having an eating disorder? Well, in addition to this total focus on their physical flaws, eating disorders are defined by dysmorphia and the binge, purge, restrict cycle of behavior. This cycle comes from the person's feelings of extreme distress and disgust about their body. This disgust drives the individual who has the disorder to become super focused on their body weight and shape. Leave a comment below if you want to know more about the binge, purge, restrict cycle. The eating disorders everyone knows about are anorexia nervosa and bulimia, but most people have never heard of eating disorders not otherwise specified, EDNOS, or avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, ARFID. Leave a comment below if you want to hear more about the lesser known eating disorders. Everyone needs food, so how is someone who has such a terrible relationship with eating and body image supposed to get better? Recovery from an eating disorder is totally possible, with a combination of talk therapy, residential treatment, and medications to treat the symptoms of any underlying mental health conditions. 8. Obsessive compulsive disorder. If obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, is a type of anxiety disorder, why did it make the number 8 spot? Simple. Professionals say 2.3% of individuals will qualify for a diagnosis of OCD during the course of their lifetime. What's the first thing you think of when you think of someone who suffers from obsessive compulsive disorder? Did you imagine someone who can't stand the thought of germs? Maybe a person who turns the doorknob 27 times before they can leave the house. The common stereotype of an individual diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, is of someone obsessed with cleaning or counting to a comical degree. But that's not the whole picture. The reality of OCD includes a great deal of anxiety, rigid thinking, and feeling isolated from others. Individuals diagnosed with OCD suffer from reoccurring thoughts that they cannot control, which are referred to as obsessions. These obsessions can be things like cleaning or counting, but also include checking and double checking, feeling as though one will be punished for being a sinner, organizing and arranging, and hoarding. Having obsessions is different from being detail-oriented, or a little type A, because individuals who suffer from obsessions experience crippling anxiety due to these thoughts they're unable to control. The compulsions are the actions, such as cleaning, hand washing, arranging, and hoarding, that individuals use to cope with overwhelming anxiety and rigid thinking. So what is someone who lives with the reality of OCD to do? Although there's no cure for OCD, a combination of medical and talk therapy will help them manage their symptoms effectively. 9. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD. We've been hearing more and more about autism spectrum disorder, ASD, in recent years. That's because approximately 1.2% of children, 1 in 59 children, will qualify for diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder in the coming year. ASD begins in childhood, but many individuals are not diagnosed until adolescence or adulthood. ASD is characterized by significantly impaired social interactions, learning, and communication. Individuals with ASD may seem eccentric or unemotional to others, as they do not understand normal social cues. Some of these odd behaviors include seeming off in their own world, repetitive thoughts or behaviors, restricted interests, poor eye contact, and difficulty communicating with others to the point their functioning is greatly impaired. The most common treatments for ASD include special education classes, applied behavioral analysis, ABA therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, behavioral management therapy, and medication management. And 10, schizophrenia and psychotic disorders. Did you know that 3 out of 100 people will experience the symptoms of psychosis in their lifetime? Yep, this means 1% of the population suffers from a psychotic disorder. People usually have their first psychotic break between the ages of 16 and 30, which means approximately 100,000 adolescents and adults will experience their first psychotic break every year. This does not mean everyone who experiences psychosis will always have a psychotic disorder. Medical and environmental or situational factors such as extreme stress, certain prescriptions, and illicit drugs can induce temporary psychosis. For individuals with a psychotic disorder, however, the symptoms last longer than 6 months. So, what is psychosis anyway? Someone suffering from psychosis has breaks or disruptions in their reality, which manifest in behaviors such as religious delusions, audio, visual, or tactile hallucinations, feelings of paranoia or persecution, and disordered or jumbled thoughts and speech. Schizophrenia is the most common psychotic disorder, but the DSM-V recognizes a few others. Would you like to know more about the other psychotic disorders? Then tell us in the comments below. Having a psychotic disorder can feel like torture, but it doesn't have to. Many people who are diagnosed with some type of psychosis are successfully treated with a combination of specialized medications, therapy, and case management. Have you or a loved one ever dealt with any of the mental illnesses in this article? Were there any symptoms on this list that surprised you? Which mental illnesses do you want to hear more about? Tell us in the comments below. As always, any information provided here is for educational purposes only. If you need mental health counseling or treatment, please contact your insurance company, local college students counseling clinic, or your county crisis line. Help is out there.
Awesome. So, for you who did not understand, did not know what help was available, have experienced some of those symptoms, now you got an idea of what might be going on from a medical science point of view, right? Pastor Chris took some notes, and there's some things that he's going to share with you regarding some of the disorders, and I did too. I got some stuff I'm going to chat with you about. Pastor, what you think about that? Like, we hear a lot, we see a lot going on in the church. You know, we met people in our family, people that we know with some of these common disorders. What do you have to say? I mean, as far as what you heard, what you know,
Well, it's a serious issue. I mean, you see this in society. It ain't just in the church. You see it in society, family, households,
yeah,
at the workforce, the work job, at your place of employment. And main thing that I see a lot is a lot of bipolar disorder.
people suffering with that.
Yeah,
Like at work.
Get angry, they fight with one another, they lose their job or they spaz out. It's crazy. Losing their job, don't even care if they lose their job.
Yeah.
So that's another one, a personality disorder. And this thing about the personality disorder, she said on the video that it cannot be cured. But my own perspective, spiritual.
From the spiritual part of us, we're going to speak on it.
The spiritual part of us, that we know that Jesus Christ dealt with people with personality disorders in that time, and he cured them.
Who was one?
He was the one that cured them.
What personality disorder did Jesus cure? Who had in the Bible?
When the man was at the tomb, cutting on himself,
Come on.
growling and
That
foaming
is a
at
disorder.
the mouth. Yeah, personality. He didn't know who he was.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that scientifically they say it's a personality disorder in the secular realm, but we know this thing go more deeper, because if a person got a personality disorder, this person can't identify who he is or who she is. They can't.
In some cases.
In some cases.
In some, like schizophrenia, if they're scientifically, if they're not medically, from a scientific perspective, if they're not taking their medicine regularly, they can get so caught up in in delusions.
Mm-hmm.
and they can start having hallucinations, right? To the point where they're so caught up and they're so caught up with living the life that on that side that they lose touch with reality.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in the case of this not knowing what's going on, it's schizophrenia,
Yeah, that's combined with that personality
with
disorder.
psychosis, right?
So we see that once Jesus dealt with the situation, the man came back into his right mind,
Yeah,
identifying who himself is.
you did.
Just like the kid that the father went to Jesus about his son throwing himself in the fire,
Mm-hmm.
having seizures, foaming at the mouth. They go another type of disorder,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is a mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety, schizo, all working in one.
Schizoid.
But yet, in the medical world, they got pharmacies, some type of pills in today's world to control those things in people's mind. Which I'm not against it, but yet the reality is that if one had to take the medication,
Pharmaceuticals,
to stay sane from these disorders.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't take these pharmaceuticals, then they end up spazzing out
and medicines.
The medicines. But yet we see, we can't speak from a spiritual standpoint, because in the secular world, if a person is living secularly, that's got these disorders, that God is not in their mind or anything, they don't want to believe in that, then it won't be no help. They might have to stay on the medications, or some might have to stay on the medications they do believe. Who knows? But I know God is the ultimate cure of these things. That's my spiritual perspective on that.
I like that. Some of the most common disorders that we see, like dealing with people, like I've seen dealing with family and friends, and even, like I said, even with me and my behaviors, right, at times, I can see, like, we're seeing a lot on the pulpit too, with like in leaders that are preaching and are pastoring or what have you. We see like different them living out, maybe responding to different traumas that they may have experienced. Like sometimes they become real emotional in the pulpit, and you'll hear people in the church saying they need to get delivered, or it's something wrong with them, they need to deal with them devils. You should pour that out in the church on people, because that behavior can cause other people to be afflicted with those same spirits. That's what they say in the church when they think somebody may be going through, having a episode, right, a psychotic moment, right in the pulpit. I believe that, in some cases, you just might be right, because there's a lot of folk. I almost want to say 98, at least 98% of folk that I've heard, bring the word, have displayed some type of behavior, by bringing the word, that you can say, they're angry, or something going on, or they need to fix that. You could say that. I believe, like, looking at it from a Christian perspective, however someone needs to get free, let them get free. I don't believe that. I think we all have our own demons that we have to resist. They may not be able to live in you as Christians, but they do constantly try to influence Christians. I believe that when you give your life to the Lord and you ask the Lord to be free, that deliverance can take place right away. But like it was said last week, that there's sometimes after you've been delivered, you can be dealing with the residue, the damage that the devils did to you before you were delivered. So it seemed like deliverance never took place, because you're still maybe acting out in certain ways that you should not. The devil's not going to stick around, because it cannot oppress a Christian. We don't believe that it can, that the devils can. but well, possess them, right? But they can cause you to be in a oppressed state of mind because of the damage it did before it was cast out of you, or it left, because now the Holy Spirit lives in you and it can't stay in your temple if the Holy Spirit lives in you. That's if you live in your life right, right? You were for real when you came to, to the altar and cried, help me, deliver me, set me free. So if you did that and you've been walking in that, the devil can't get in you because the Holy Spirit now takes residence in you. And so devils won't stay where you're praising and worshiping God and you're calling on God, you're reading scriptures. No, the devil's like, I'm out. That's just like being somewhere where they can't, they're not going to be nowhere where they can't be drunk. They're not going to be nowhere where they can't get high. They're not going to be nowhere where they can't molest you or influence you or constantly whisper in your ear and try to influence you, entice you to do stupid things. So when the Holy Spirit comes and say, now there's a new sheriff in town, they have to pack up and go. But if you don't keep yourself, they can always come and afflict you. And so sometimes I believe we are afflicted by various mental health illnesses. And if we don't, ask God to set us free from those things can stay in us and torment us if we don't give our lives to Christ. But that's a whole nother show, right? Depression is one of the things that I see a lot of. We are depressed. As Black folk, we're depressed. As women, we are depressed because we've had to wear the hats of just about everything, right? We had to be mom, we had to be dad, we had to be provider, we had to be grandma, grandpa. We've had to, we've had to work, to make ends meet. We had to do so much. So a lot of women, suffer with depression. And when they, decided that they were going to introduce or target women and cause them to drink, fruity drinks and all this sweet stuff, drinks, when they influenced us with alcohol, that just added to the depression. So we see a lot of women, not only Black women, but all women, a lot of different women from a lot of different races. They're drinking more than ever during these times because they are depressed, because they're oppressed. And so we see that a lot, Pastor. We see that in the church. When we have to know, we have to, realize that these people are coming. They're coming. And so if we're depressed, right? If I'm
Right.
dealing with my mental health stuff and they're coming depressed, that's gonna make me a good minister for real, because I understand where they're coming from. We can cry together, honey. We can snot and we can cry, we can spit together, right? About everything we've been through. But at the end of the day, one of us gonna have to be able to stand up. One of us going to have to be able to get up from there and be able to help lead the other one to get the help that they need. If that's just saying, come to Jesus, right? From a Christian perspective. And then later saying, okay, we told them to come to Jesus, but listen, we're not here at the church 3 times a day offering counseling. We're not here three times a week, offering counseling, or being there and listening to them just pour out to their empty, and now they do feel better. So we have to be able to get up, right, and be able to direct them to spiritual psychologists, spiritual psychiatrists, who understands spiritual things, because the medical science has determined that you have to include spirituality in counseling, because they are aware that these are spirits. They're aware that these are spirits in the medical science. When it comes to mental health illness, they are aware. It has been proven that schizophrenia is real. Is all of it a demon? No. We learned that last week. Is all of it devils? No. But they are, when they're telling them to kill somebody or kill themselves, that may be a spirit. But if they're just talking to having conversations with voices in their heads, okay, that may not be a spirit. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot with that, because I think last week they said, just because somebody's saying kill themselves or kill somebody, that may not be schizophrenia, because it might just be the person is suffering so much and still been afflicted after the deliverance. They may be suffering so much they feel like they want to die. or they want to kill somebody because they realize that you traumatized me. It just depends. You have to have a conversation with that person to find out what's really going on. You got to really be, you got to first off be educated and be licensed to be able to talk to somebody and allow them to go back in their past, open up that thing and find out what's going on so that they may be delivered after the spirits are identified. Spiritual psychologists, spiritual psychiatrists, they have the education, they have the spiritual knowledge to be able to do that and get that person free. We can't always do that in a church service. We can stir some stuff up, but then they leave and we're gonna see depression come back to church that next Sunday. We're gonna see PTSD was one of the ones that I, identified because I was diagnosed with it, right? PTSD. We're gonna see PTSD showed up because there's some traumas that took place. And okay, I'm in church now and I'm good. I'm not mad at mama no more. I'm not mad at, that man that did that to me, or, the other things that I was traumatized behind. I'm not starving to death anymore. I don't need somebody to come and save me and my brothers and sisters because we were abandoned for days with no food. I'm not traumatized by those things anymore. I've come to terms that those things happened to me because the person that was in charge of caring for me was mentally ill themselves. And so now I understand why those things happen to me. And it's okay that that those things happen. I understand now that the enemy targeted me and those that was put in my care. They targeted me and they targeted us. And as a result, they thought they won, but they did not. And so I refuse, Pastor Chris, to give those thoughts, any time in my head. So I'm okay today. So I can cry with somebody and get back up and say, now, come on, girl. Call me anytime you need me, day or night. We're going to pray. I'm going to teach you how to pray. I'm going to show you how to pray. I'm going to show you how to trust in God. I'm going to pray that God gives you more faith. But at the end of the day, if you want to, I'm not a professional. I can tell you, I can teach that word. But I'm going to recommend that you talk to somebody where you can really, really, really share, what you've experienced and how you made you feel. And so that's my perspective. But yeah, depression and PTSD was one. We are still fighting against those things that traumatized us years ago, or maybe even recently. You want to weigh in on that? Depression. 15.7 million people, which is 6.7%, she said, which equates to 15.7 million people in the United States are suffering right now with that depression.
Yeah. She said something about fatigue and
Yeah.
said the women, it's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
And their emotion, their will and their emotion, their behaviors, their mentality when it comes to depression. So yeah, depression, we know that it's a common thing among people, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
It's a spirit that's oppressing.
Mm-hmm.
Person that causes them to be depressed. We get so much of the depression, the anxiety comes. From the depression and anxiety, it comes the thoughts of suicide. And most get that tendency. Or they abuse drugs or alcohol to cover it up, to wash away, which we know is called obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a repetitive behavior that's constantly being over and over. They got to have it. They got to continue on doing what they're doing just to keep a peace, a mind, a total peace, until on the spiritual side, until if God show up and deliver them and they become believers, then the deliverance can take place. See, I done dealt with many people with
obsessive compulsive disorders.
We all went through that type of stuff. We did stuff over and over that we had to do it. Well, we wanted to do it, during the time we was out there in the world. But when we stepped over into this life, because Jesus already said that you didn't choose me, we did not choose him, he chose us. When the call came across our life and the new birth took place, those repetitive behaviors start changing up to something new that we didn't want to continue on down that path.
We live with people like A lot of people every day, all day, you'll hear
Right.
people say, I'm stressed, right? They
Mhm.
talk about being stressed out all the time. They talk about suffering from anxieties. I hear people say, my anxieties, oh, my anxieties. They can't, they put so much on their plate. Like, they got so much to do, or they are so determined to say, go to work every day. I work, 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 work.
Yep.
Never do
Compulsive
anything
behavior.
else. Right. That compulsive behavior. Because in it's really, would you call it compulsive behavior, or would you call it just having to get up every day to go to work just to provide for your family? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That can turn into, this compulsive behavior. I have to do it. I have to do it. You have some people that will not take,
Take
no vacation
vacation,
time.
no
They
days
will,
off.
no days
Yeah.
off because they got to be at work, got to be at work, got to be at work. They work, 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 work. I
Kill
remember
themselves.
till they kill it, they die
Best
from
they
it.
health up. Yep.
Stress.
Yeah.
That's what stress. So, some of these disorders are because of stress. We teach self-care where I work. We're always, teaching stress, self-care, because we see, employees who are stressed out, or they're tired, or they're fatigued, or they're irritated. Like I know I think it's depression. One of the symptoms of depression in men is, I think she said, irritation, and it was something else. It was irritation and something else in men, right? Moody or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It was two things that she had mentioned about, how men express, signs of depression. But a lot of stress, women, we got to realize sometimes that we can cause our men to be stressed, just wanting what we want and expecting what we expect, and them having to, perform, to provide. We can sometimes put a lot of stress on our men, and eventually at some point, some men, they walk away from women that are so demanding, right? So selfish in their thinking. Sometimes it's so subtle, we don't understand that they got to figure it out themselves. Let them figure it out. Even with addiction, I can look back at my past, and some of the people the men I was with that was struck two previous marriages, they were struggling, both of them struggling the same demons when in addiction. And I wanted to fix them. I wanted to fix them, to the point where it's affecting my mental health. I wanted to fix them. I didn't know I was suffering from depression. I didn't know I was suffering from PTSD. So their behaviors would cause me to react in such a violent way, or, to the point where once I had a breakdown and I had to call my mom, and she just had to hold me for hours until I can just bring it in, But sometimes we don't realize that we can't, as women, we can't fix everybody. We can't make a man change. You can't make a woman change. That's something that they're going to have to deal with. They're going to have to deal with their own demons, their own devils. We have to stay focused, because stress can trigger, as we heard tonight, depression, PTSD, especially with PTSD. When you start feeling yourself being stressed out and overwhelmed and a lot of stuff going on, you finding yourself like, I've been in this funk for 6 weeks, longer than 6 weeks. I heard her say, that you're in a depression, you're in a manic state. She didn't say manic, she used the word medic, but there's an episode that's going on. You're having an episode of maybe PTSD or depression or whatever, if it's been longer than 6 weeks. And I know the DMH says something about, if you're experiencing so many different symptoms, right? You only have to be experiencing 3 or 4 symptoms, and they have to last a certain the DMH, I think it's called DSM, the DSM. You only have to be experiencing so many symptoms before you get a diagnosis. So if you got stress, you got irritability, and you got, another one, that's a disorder. And if you had a long periods of time of that,
Right. PTSD. It can be 1 month.
That's
it can
serious.
be years and years and years. It's a lot of folks going for years and years. Just like I can
That's
say in
serious.
society, of Americans, black African Americans, those who went through the time of the 50s and 60s as grown men or teenagers. They experienced a traumatic event that is difficult to recover from, that they experienced, that they witnessing, the terrifying event, or been a part of that event.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it'll cause a hate for another cultural person that did them wrong. And they'll keep with it for years and years, even to their grave. And we see this with a lot of our African American men that's elders or older that they really don't care about the culture of the man that harmed them or did a traumatic event towards them and their family. That it's a common hatred that they have in their heart, which we see there is a post. What I say that?
PTSD.
Yeah, PTSD, post-traumatic disorder,
Mm-hmm.
because they had experience of events.
Traumatic stress.
I myself, I
Disorder.
experienced stuff in my younger life as a kid, growing up in the late 70s, in the mid 70s, late 70s, experienced some things that happened to my mama that caused me to be so angry that I wanted to defend my mama and my family and my sister. That won't nobody ever put their hands on my family. And that stayed with me for years.
Mm-hmm. PTSD.
Years. PTSD. Then my defense mode. Then the thing turned around that even caused me to react on people that I shouldn't have reacted on due to this traumatic experience in my life. You know, growing up from the mid 70s, coming through the 80s, then with my sister, with all my family members. But I was more like a protector. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I had a post-traumatic disorder. What I experienced.
Well, you haven't been diagnosed with that.
No, I wasn't diagnosed
but
with
you're
it.
just saying that, some of the things that you experienced could have easily been diagnosed as that. Like I know, like a lot of times, like anxiety, right? Like we can just I got this coworker that always says, my anxiety. I started finally told her, stop saying that. Because when you say my anxiety, I understand what you're saying when you're saying, God, this adds to, this causes me a problem. It causes anxiety. I get that. But when we claim stuff, when we say, this is mine, we're claiming it. We're saying it's ours. So, but I hear what you're saying, Pastor Chris, when you're saying, I saw this. I was traumatized by this thing that I saw so many times over. And then eventually I had my breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
And I responded to it. So I wouldn't necessarily call that some kind of disorder. Right. I would just say, yeah, sometimes the things that we experience that we're traumatized by, it shows up later. And it has nothing to do with what the trauma was. Like what happened to me with, with the job I was working, and I didn't even know that I had PTSD and depression, and I was a pastor. I didn't know that. Right? Because God was my everything. Go ahead.
From them years, in the late 70s, I learned how to fight. As I got older, fight, street fighting, boxing, street fighting, boxing, street fight, protecting my family, street fight, all through my elementary years, my junior high years, my high school years. I fought to defend. Mm-hmm. I fought to defend myself, defend my family.
Yeah.
Even was beating up bullies that bully people. That stuff. But hey, I thank God that I'm broken from that lifestyle. But yeah. All the way to my 30s.
Yeah. But then you have to think, like if you think back, I hear you, sis. Oh yeah. If you think back, right? If you think back, if you look at your relationship, right? Say, for instance, you was traumatized as a child, such as Chris was, right? And then you look into your relationships that you were in since that time, your intimate relationship with women, right? How I used to look at my older children, and I used to think, golly, I hate that they're tolerating, they're going for anything when it comes to people that they enter into relationship, that they're settling for that. But then I had to look back at me and say, how did I deal with my traumas? How did I deal with the things that I was going through? To maintain my mental health, I oversaw, because I was responding out of my emotions, I allowed things to happen in my marriages at the time, because I just wanted to give that person an opportunity to get it together, right? So my children, we forget as women, our children, right? Like what your mom was going through. Our children they're in the background and they're seeing what's going on. And this is affecting their mental health. And we don't realize that as mothers because we're grown and we're doing what we do as grown-ups, right? We're grown. Like sis just said on the comment, she just said, life is happening for everyone. People are becoming shell-shocked, she said.
Yep.
Kids are children, sis. They're becoming shell-shocked. They're sitting in the homes and what's going on in some of these homes today, and they have to shut up, go to their room, or they're allowed to sit right there. Some of them are old enough to smoke and drink while all this stuff is going on. In some houses, not all houses, but they're doing all this stuff, and this is affecting their mental health. So later on, it plays out in their relationship. So when I look back and I saw, oh my God, oh my God, what I allowed to happen in my home has now shaped my children's tolerance to bull crap. Come on, y'all know let's keep it real. I want to say something. The other word, I exposed them to so much bull crap. To now, I had no understanding as to why they're tolerating such behaviors. Well, I guess they learned that from me. And so at some point, I just pray to God, Lord, don't let them have a nervous breakdown. Don't let them say, yes, a learned behavior. Hurt people.
That's right.
Hurt people. And it goes on and on and on and on from generation to generation to generation. And then eventually we got to go talk to somebody, the ones that do. You got some of them, they're not talking to nobody. They're just they're jumping off of bridges. They're hanging themselves. They're blowing their brains out. They're killing people that they loved and they thought loved them. They're killing them and they're killing themselves. Yeah. We have this stuff going on because I believe you hear parents say all the time. You hear the community say, it starts with the parents. I blame the parents. I don't blame the children. Well, you know what? That didn't make sense to me because I thought, I'm a good mom. I'm a good mother. I went to work. I did what I need to do. It wasn't my fault that I was connected to men that just didn't mean me no good. Because like sis just said, hurt people. I wasn't thinking about none of that. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't thinking about me being loving and kind and patient and caring to this man, how it was affecting my kids. And so now we got mental health. We're seeing a lot of it. And we wonder why we're seeing it more now than ever before. Mothers was humble. Yeah. And old school, my grandmother, my mother's now, they were humble. They let the men do what the women didn't talk a lot. They didn't say a lot. So it wasn't as bad back then, or if it was hidden. It was hidden. But today you got both running the household, and the ones that are actually two-parent homes. You don't see that. You see mothers just trying to do what they do, and daddy's doing what they want to do.
And then also,
oh my God, sis, help me.
Fathers not being in the homes in this generation right now. Most of the children that's out in the streets is being raised by the streets.
We got to break the cycle.
They've been raised by the street gangs, raised by the streets, period.
Yes.
Living our identity that's false and saying this is the way I was raised, this is my environment, this is who I am. Yeah. That's a mental disorder. They ain't who they are. That's what happened in their life because wasn't nobody there to mold their minds, teach them how to become men, become women. So all they knew was to do what they do because they're being tore down with words from the parent that didn't care, but just tearing them down with words. You know what they said, the old saying that sticks and stones might break my bones, but words never hurt. Yeah, words do hurt. Word carry power. It can shape the thinking of a child. Whatever you put and portray out there, whether it be negative or good, if it's bad and it's in a negative way, it's going to shape that child's mind, and that child going to come up in the wrong way.
It's going to cause what we go back to the subject.
Right.
It's going to create what the medical scientific world calls anxieties. It's going to build up stress. So you build it. So they build it up. Like you said, they heard that their whole lives, their whole lives in the Black community. I can only speak for my hood, where we came from, my brothers and sisters, what we experienced, what our friends and neighbors experienced in the hood. I can only speak from that perspective. I can speak from other perspectives because I'm a counselor. I'm a substance disorder counselor. So I can speak from that population and saying, even if you had a good life and your parents worked and they provided for you, still there was something missing from that child because you weren't not there enough to nurture them the way that they needed to be nurtured. So as a result, we created mental health illnesses in our children, and they were later diagnosed because there was an episode of some sort, right? Of some sort. The substances came in. They started drinking, smoking, getting high, start being influenced by other friends and family members, you know, who, like sister said, hurt people, you know. So they all drinking and getting high and doing whatever, because all these years had passed, and maybe like some of it's just genetics, right? But all these years passed, and what was lying dormant has been awakened. Mm-hmm. Those spirits, from a Christian perspective, have been awakened, and now our children and our children's children, they are suffering. Like this, that's Tashia, like she just said, we have to break it, the cycle. Right. We have to break the cycle.
So the mental,
you have to break it. Do you get that, honey? Yeah. From the time they heard, they were able to hear and understand in the home. Right. So when people say I blame the parents, think about it. Have you done everything you to do to nurture that child? Did you see the signs in the beginning of the generational curse being awakened? Did you go get them the help that they need from the church? Was the church in a position, was the leadership in a position to understand these things? What mental health look like? Do they have any experience with deliverance? What that really means? Come on now. They're coming up, yes, with poor coping skills. Our children. But do the church know how to, you want to come to the church, bring it to the Lord, come in, come on, let's pray. You got to come to church and got to do it. But do you know how to deal with spirits that are afflicting our children? Right. If you're not educated in that, if you don't understand the scientific part of it when it comes to mental health and the spiritual part of it and how God works in all things for the good for those that love him, if you don't have a clear understanding to that, you're not going to do any good. Those same people, and you wonder why the same people are coming to the altars, Pastor, the same one is coming up for prayer every day in the churches.
Let me say this. That means that
they was distracted.
Yeah, there it is. Number two.
Since they couldn't see because they was
everything that you said. Number two, what the woman said on that video.
Ooh.
This is called a personality disorder.
No, that's a different thing, honey.
It's
more than just an action.
I know it's more than anything, but I'm saying is when it comes to the child coming up. Personality disorder can come in many ways because they was dogged with words. The parent who didn't know no better, they probably was dogged when they was coming up. And here's a generation being dogged now. Word, you ain't nothing, your daddy wasn't nothing, whoop-de-whoop.
So what happens to a child when they hear that, when you're constantly hearing that, what happens to create the personality disorder? If you don't know, say, tell me. You know I will.
Yeah.
So when a personality, well, I might be wrong, so somebody correct me that might see this. So when someone develops a personality disorder, from what I've studied, unless I missed something along the way, it's when you blocked out all that stuff that you've heard, right? You blocked out all that stuff you heard your life, all the hurtful, horrible things that auntie said, mama said, daddy said, grandma, whoever said, and that personality is created to protect you, to help protect you, right? So in order to protect the person's mental, this personality is created. And so you can talk to now, mama, daddy, whoever, they can talk and call me all kind of names and say everything one ear out of the other, because that personality is going to step up and defend me, right? But that personality might step up. In some cases, it can get real bad because the personality can do something to somebody to protect what that person. That's a whole nother subject, and we need to really dig into that. We really need to dig, right? So okay, so she said that's right. I think she's talking to me about me, But we have to understand, like, read it, honey. If you get it, read it out loud.
No,
What is a personality disorder? Come on, we're gonna go a little longer tonight. Go ahead.
People have unique personalities made up.
Okay, made up
of a complex combination of different traits.
Yes.
Personality traits affect how people understand and relate to the world around them, as well as how they see themselves. Ideally, people's personality traits allow them to be flexible, adapt to their changing environment in ways that lead to more healthy relationship with others or better coping strategy. When people have personality traits, they are less adaptive. This leads inflexibility to unhealthy coping. For example, if they manage stress by drinking or misusing drugs, have a hard time managing their anger and finding it hard to trust and connect with others.
Poor coping skills. Sis said that. So when it comes to mental health disorders, though, I mean, I think that personality disorders is you're going back. You may be this way, but then an hour from now, you may have a whole different flaw in your character, right? Your personality has totally changed to a whole different person. And it stems from traumas. You know, things you've experienced in your life, you learn how to cope. You don't have any coping skills. So when you go in and you get therapy, you have to be taught coping skills. You have to be taught grounding skills, how to relax. Sometimes you have to go back to the time where you were traumatized and live that thing out. And if it's anger, you need to go ahead and learn how to be angry and get it out. What Tashia said, multiple personality disorders is a created personality to help them to deal with trauma. The brain shuts down. Another character comes out to help cope. Okay, that's that one. Multiple personality disorders, not personality disorders. Yes, sis, thank you. Yes.
Watch this.
Multiple.
Personality forms early in life. It shapes through a blend of your genes. Your parents may pass down some personality traits to you. Some of these traits are called your temperament. Environment. This includes your surroundings, events that happen to you, around you, relationships and patterns of interaction with family members and others. So when you hear people saying, this is the way I am, this is the way I was raised, it's a part of my environment, we talking about the bad things. See, my daddy, my uncle was like that, I'm gonna be like this. They was murderers, they was drug dealers, I'm a drug dealer, I'm a murderer. This is what they see, this is what they heard, this is what we're talking about. Personality disorder. But once a child become a certain age, it's like ourselves. We were a certain age. We became men and women. Now we had to make a choice. What path we want to go down. We want to still live like this and go to destruction, destroy our own life, or we'll come out of it. We came to our senses with it. We've seen this type of life. We've seen what the hood can do. We've seen all this, so we experienced it. We done all that. The gang banging, selling the drugs, fighting.
Some people, everybody.
Not everybody. But yet, I'm just speaking about myself. We experience these things.
Some people.
But yet, as time goes on, as I get older, I had to make a choice. I can't be like uncle, such.
But hold on, honey. We're talking about mental health disorders. We're talking about things that.
Well, I'm on this personality.
But I don't want to say something. I'm just saying. I get you. I'm just saying. We're talking about mental health illness, mental health disorders. These are people. We're talking to people about people that has been scientifically studied and diagnosed as being out of control in certain areas of their lives, and it's been decided that this is a disease or whatever, and now they need mental health counseling or medication and therapy and all of this, right? And how we're talking about how some behaviors were ignored, right? Were ignored to the point now people are sitting in depression. They're sitting in PTSD. They're sitting in bipolar. You know, they're carrying these diagnoses around. And like sis said, some of them are underdiagnosed. Nobody seems to get it right. So, you know, they're underdiagnosing them. Not even in the church, we're not calling out the right spirits. They'll start calling out all kind of spirits to get people delivered instead of calling out the strong man itself. So many manifestations of one spirit You know, so they're going into churches and people laying, they're like, you're going to be caught. We just had a deliverance service at the church a couple of weeks ago, and we seen a young lady. She came up for deliverance, and sure enough, the deliverance minister she was praying for, and she said, come out. She called out so many different spirits, and the young lady just kept yarning, which is a sign that somebody's been delivered. She kept yarning. Every time the sister called out a spirit, the young lady would yarn. And finally, the Lord sent me over and told me to minister to that little child that had multiple personalities. Minister to that little child that those multiple personalities are trying to protect. That was the strong man. That was the strong man. So all the manifestation of what these personalities had done, they were lying spirits, they were depression spirits, they were this, so many manifestations from one strong man. We spend too much time in the church trying to get folk delivered when they just really need to get to the bottom of what started this, what happened. Identify the strong man, right? What it is, the strong man will be identify the trauma. What caused you to be this way? What caused you to be, you might be real freaky. There's something that started that. What started that? So you're doing this and you're lying, you're stealing, you're cheating, you're manipulating, you're having sex with everybody and their mamas and their daddies and their friends and your friends, and you're doing all this. So we go and they go to church and we're in the name of Jesus Christ, be healed from pornography. No, it's not just that. It's more than that. So I think we have to understand that.
That's why I said
legions.
All the mental illness that we heard.
Spiritual warfare.
All we heard from the mental illness, it begins when a child is young. It begins with.
Not necessarily.
Well, it don't got to be necessary like that. But I believe, this is my own belief.
Well.
The personality disorder, one of the mental illness, personality disorder is the personality disorder brings about all that other stuff coming in.
That part.
Because the mind has been shaped to be what it is by negativity, negative words, and the way a person was raised up.
If somebody get busted in their head right now, because they just went to catch the bus or got in their car and they got beaten in the head, and it traumatized them. So every time they get out to go in their car, they see people or whatever, they're traumatized. That don't have to be because as a child, they were traumatized. It can start anytime.
Yeah,
right?
Disorder,
it depends on the disorder. It depends on, you have to ask the right questions. And you have to do, we call it a psychosocial, where we look at everything. We look at everything to find out what brought that patient to seek treatment for chemical dependency. Right? We have to act. They get so sick of the assessments last 3 hours long. And by the time we're done, we've asked all these questions, and so that we can put the best, help them to create the best treatment plan for them. And one of the things that we do, we have to link them to mental health services. If we have, assessed that there's a need, that there was some traumas, or we have to get them reconnected if they're connected. Because what may have traumatized them when they were a child, when they were a teenager or young adult, or even in their adulthood, that could be causing them to use drugs. And now they're addicted to more than likely opiates, right? Or alcohol.
Right.
Or alcohol. Or some people like stimulants, cocaine, So we touched on some stuff tonight. This was good. And we're going to continue next Saturday. We're going to be doing mental health for the whole month of, is it March? Are we still? Yep. We just got started. If you have a topic that you want to discuss concerning mental health, I went on a tangent because I could just, listen, we see people in and out of the church that are afflicted with some form of disorder. We brought to you tonight 10 common disorders. And we had a lot to say about depression and PTSD more than any of them. It's because we have seen, as a Black woman, I have experienced trauma that was just recently diagnosed. Was it last year, a few years ago? I was diagnosed as having PTSD and minor depression disorder without episode. My sign, I didn't even know it until I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep at night because was working this job and they treated me so badly that I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't sleep at night because I was constantly playing over the different conversations I was having. They made me be involved in something I didn't want to be involved in because I love all people. And they treated me so badly by disregarding how I felt and not giving me a voice. And I couldn't deal with that. I didn't know how to deal with it. I took it to God. Lord, forgive them. They know not what they do. I prayed. I got up. I had to get up and I had to pray. I had to get up when the devil would wake me up at 3:00 and say, think on these things. So I had to learn how to use what I know best, the word of God. And if it wasn't for the word of God and me being a woman of God and a woman of God, right? If it had not been for me knowing God is my refuge, even times when I was attacked, I could run to him. So I had to get up out the bed at 3:00 in the morning. Whenever these legions tried to torment my thinking, right? When they tried to wake me up and I get up, I'm not saying it wasn't like that. I'm just saying the fact that I'm laying there in the bed, so I had to get up and use the bathroom, right? And so I had to get up right before I get up, the thoughts of what was going on the job. And now I got to get up and go to the bathroom, and then I come back to lay back down, the thoughts. And finally, I'm like, what is this? I would have to say the Lord's Prayer in order to get some rest. I would have to pick up my phone and just go start scrolling on Facebook and I would hear the Lord speaking to me and ministering to me. And so I'm pouring out what I'm hearing the Lord say on Facebook. And I'm like, and I finally realized I'm under attack. I call it being under attack. The medical science call it, no, that's anxiety. So I couldn't talk to nobody because all church folks say is, you got to pray about it. Take it to God. Pray about it. I'm praying for you. That's all they got to say. Don't dare say, apostle, you might need to, come up against a spirit that's coming. Pastor, you might need. Nobody came to me because of the position I held in the church. Nobody came to me and said, this may be scientifically, I think they call that anxiety. That might be a spirit of anxiety that's trying to torment you. So I go and I went and sought help from a psychologist that said, you know what? It might have been a psychiatrist that said, it was a psychiatrist, because a psychologist, they can't give you medicine. The psychologist listened to me for an hour and a half. And I had to tell them from the time I was almost born and pushed out all the way up until that day. And then that's when they were able. You all right?
Yeah.
That's when they were able to come up with their diagnosis. And I say, thank you for telling me what the name of the spirits were. I left. I declined the medication that they tried to put me. One was they said, hold the voices back, right? Because when you can't when your thoughts are just being invaded, to hold those back, that process back, right? Hold them back. And then the other medication was so that I could sleep. I said, absolutely not. I got exactly what I need, what I've been using my whole life, Doc. Finally, I know what to call. And so I start calling those spirits out. I would get up when they woke me up. Oh, y'all want to fight? Y'all want to fight? I called on legions of angels to come and help me fight them. And I put them in position supernaturally to protect my home and to protect me while I slept. And I haven't had another attack. Can I say that another attack will not come? I can't. Because I can't control what's happening supernaturally until it happens. And so I can't say when it comes back, now that I identify and I know what it is, I know now how to fight. And so we thank you tonight for tuning in. We look forward to sharing even more with you come next. We're normally on Saturdays. We had some things to take care of. So when we're not live on Saturdays, we just move it onto Sundays. But it's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss Let's Keep It Real Family Edition featuring Pastor Chris. He's going to be with us through this whole month. We're talking about things from a spiritual perspective as well as a medical scientific perspective as it relates to mental health. God bless each and every one of you. Did you want to say a prayer?
Yeah. Well, I want to say it in conclusion.
In conclusion
is this. The mind got to be healed. Emotions got to be healed.
The soul.
Which is the soul. And that's what it comes down to. It's got to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And the process don't take overnight. Mm-hmm. It's going to take time. Especially our person that went so far down in the mental illnesses that they experience in their life. Healing got to take place in the mind and emotions. Let us bow our head. Lord, I just thank you, Lord, for this topic on mental health. I thank you for Chantel, Lord, who brought forth the show, Father, keeping it real as we stay on the month, Father, of mental health through the whole month of March. We ask you, Lord, to be with us, Lord, and show us more that we can share. We love you. We thank you. And we love the people that tuned in and joined us. In Jesus' name.
Thank
amen.
you. And if you or someone you know are suffering with mental health, just know that there is a number that's coming across the screen on the bottom, the local NAMI. You can call that number. There's a helpline on there, and it is national number. You can text the number that's scrolling across. It's time for you to get some help. Pastor and overseer, they can do it by themselves. But are you going to do what you need to do and follow the instructions to get the help that you need? All things work together for good for those that love the Lord. So if you need to talk to someone and you can't trust anyone, seek out professional help. There is help for mental health. We love you. God bless you. Until next Saturday. Right. Well, no, God bless you forever, but we'll see you next Saturday. Good night.